please consider supporting my work on Patreon from only $1. Thank you. Hello and welcome to All Top 5s. Who loves Christmas? The living? The dead? Don't forget A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens was a prime example of spooky Yuletide happenings as tradition. But here are 5 real-world hauntings of Christmas ghosts. Number 5. In Eureka Springs, Arkansas, there's an old hotel harkening back to 1886. It's called the Crescent Hotel, and it's believed to be extremely haunted. There's a red-haired Irish stonemason called Michael, whose ghost causes mischief in room 218 by playing with the lights, the TV, and he pounds on the walls. Hands have even been seen emerging from the bathroom mirror, also thought to be Michael. The hotel used to be a cancer hospital, and the ghost of a white-clad nurse is reported to be seen pushing a gurney along the 3rd floor corridor, but only ever after 11 PM, the time each day that the hospital would remove the deceased. But in the crystal dining room, there are said to be dozens of spirits. Like a scene straight out of The Shining, the spirits of dressed-up dancers are reported regularly, although all in Victorian attire. One Christmas, the hotel staff entered the dining room to find the Christmas tree and all the presents underneath it had been moved clear across the room, with the dining chairs rearranged in a semicircle facing the tree. Perhaps the Victorian spirits disagreed with how the staff had decorated, or perhaps they were just having some Christmas fun in their long afterlife. Number 4. One of the best-known prisons of all time, Alcatraz in San Francisco, California, has always been believed to be haunted. People believe the island takes the energy of those held there and never lets that energy leave. With all those decades of pent-up rage and isolation, people's reports of voices, screams, and doors clanging throughout the old penitentiary make some kind of sense. The warden of the prison in the 30s and 40s was James Johnston, a tough, no-nonsense man. Although he reportedly didn't believe in ghosts, he did witness the sounds of a sobbing woman followed by a sudden freezing wind as he was escorting guests on a tour of the prison's dungeon. During the 40s, Warden Johnston hosted a Christmas party at his home on the island, now derelict. The guards in attendance all bore witness to a sudden halt in the festivities when a ghostly figure of a man with mutton chop sideburns wearing a grey suit appeared there in front of them. The temperature in the room plummeted, and the fire in the stove went out all by itself, suddenly. Soon after he appeared, he vanished, never to be seen again. Quite who this gentleman was, and what he wanted with the merry revellers at that Christmas feast on Alcatraz Island, no one knows. Number 3. Going back across the pond and back in time to Christmas Eve in the late 18th century, we have the story of an infamous highwayman named Gilbert. That night, on Christmas Eve, he stopped a horse-drawn coach along Hawkhurst Road in Mardin, Kent, England. A young lady inside stepped out as he ordered, and the horses suddenly bolted away, taking her father with them in the carriage. As the frightened young woman looked up at the face of this highwayman, she recognised with horror that this was the man who had murdered her brother years before. Without pause for breath, she whipped out a knife and stabbed Gilbert the highwayman in the ribs, escaping into the bushes. Later that night, the coach and horses returned to find the highwayman lying dead in a pool of his own blood. They buried him by the side of the road and searched for the missing young woman. Searching the forest the next day, they found her. She had gone completely mad and never recovered. From then on, people avoided that stretch of road, and on the night of every Christmas Eve, a ghostly version of that scene is said to replay itself in all its spooky bloodiness. Number 2. Hever Castle in Kent, England, is a beautifully kept castle that was home to Anne Boleyn, the infamous second wife of the equally infamous King Henry VIII. The king famously lusted after Anne Boleyn, going to great lengths to make her his wife after noticing her as a maid belonging to his first wife, Catherine. Henry covetously interfered with Anne's proposed marriage to a nobleman, banishing poor Anne back to her childhood home of Hever Castle. From there, she received King Henry's love letters, and before long, he had annulled his first marriage and took Anne Boleyn to be his wife in secret. Despite having a child with her, Queen Elizabeth I it turned out, King Henry became hostile towards Anne and arranged for her to be executed on counts of adultery, incest, and conspiracy. She was then beheaded by the executioner's sword. There are reports of Anne Boleyn's ghost in the Tower of London, where she was held for trial, among many other places. But perhaps the most wistful is that spirit that is said to haunt Hever Castle, her childhood home. Every year on Christmas Eve, some see the figure of Anne Boleyn floating silently across the bridge that spans the River Eden on the grounds of her beloved home before she had left it to change English history forever. Number 1. In Suffolk, England, stands one of the most haunted houses in the country. The 16th century Roose Hall has some dark stories attached to it. There's the Hanging Tree, a grand oak tree that was planted on the exact spot of an old gallows where many criminals were once executed by hanging and left to rot. There's an even darker tale of an old cupboard hidden away in the building, inside which is said to be an evil mark, the sign of the devil, in the form of a burnt cloven hoof. There's the window near the top of the building too, out from which is said to peer the face of a pale, small girl. But perhaps the most famous haunting of Roose Hall is one that occurs every Christmas Eve. Long after the sun has set, the legend says, a terrifying headless horseman comes screaming down the driveway to the hall, led by 4 jet black horses pulling a phantom carriage. This clattering, imposing spectre roaming the grounds at night is a sight to chill the blood of any unfortunate witness out for a stroll around Roose Hall on the night of Christmas Eve. And that's it from All Top 5s. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, and if you've enjoyed this video please give it a like, and you can subscribe and click that bell to stay informed. Or you can click there to support All Top 5s on Patreon, becoming a true legend and having my gratitude. Peace and love and Merry Christmas to each and every one of you, and I'll see you all next time on All Top 5s.